I'm going to show you how to do this from scratch. You can make your own part. Let's go to part design. I'm going to create a sketch. I'm going to create a sketch on this plane. Go normal just to flatten it. And I'm going to double click the rectangles. Let's try it again. Double click on the rectangles. I'll create one rectangle, another rectangle, and I'm intentionally creating this rectangle last. I'm going to use my quick trim and remove this out. When I analyze this to get a closed profile, do you know why I won't have a closed profile? Why do I have so many isolated elements? The reason why I have so many isolated elements is because I did the quick trim, but remember there were rectangles on top of rectangles? Well, those little edges still left over. Now, the reason why I created the vertical one last is I knew that that would be line 12, this last one here, which would be one I want to keep that's isolated. The rest of the profile is without that line there, and the reason why it doesn't know about that line, it doesn't know which one to join to, because there's two overlapping lines on this corner and two overlapping lines on this corner. I want to get rid of all of these lines here, so I'll just highlight those. Those are those four little lines that are part of the rectangles that I did in quick trim. Line number 12 is that long line, so I can use the erase command right here, or delete geometry, under the connective action in the pop-up window. I click on this, and now I have one closed profile. Now to build the shape, I'm going to go to Sketch, Axis, throw an axis here. And remember last time when I created my, when I created my constraints, or when I modified my constraints, this wasn't constant. So remember the rule with auto constrain. Set your constraints to things not coming off my datum. Or if you know you want to maintain this at a 1/4 inch thickness, just set those 1/4 inch thickness and then let the computer do the rest. You know what I'm going to do here is I'm going to auto search, and what it finds is all adjacent elements. So that closed profile is all it's going to dimension when I hit auto constrain. My reference will be this axis to keep it symmetrical, and this line over here. Select symmetry. I'm going to make it symmetrical about that line and select OK. Now, the only thing I didn't like what it did, and I don't know why it does that, but wait a minute, did I stack? Let's try that again. Auto constrain. I thought I did. This is my reference element, and this is my reference element. Stack dimension it. Yep. Select symmetry. Use this line as my symmetrical line. So that your pop-up window should look like this. Select OK. The only thing I don't like is I don't really care for that. I would rather have an overall. But if you were more concerned about maintaining what this inside wall thickness is, then we can leave that dimension that way. And what I'll do is I'll double click this, equals, grab this one over here. Now if I want to modify it later, this will equal that one. I could do the same thing for this thickness. Double click that, hit equals, click on this one, say OK. Now these two flanges will be equal. You could do the same thing for this flange here to have them all an equal gauge thickness. Now the reason why you don't need this constraint on the bottom and why it turns purple is it's telling you it's over constrained, because this little coincident When I created the rectangles, it found a link and linked them when I did my auto constraint. So I don't need that. I'll undo that. Now it's not constrained yet. Why isn't it constrained? How do you know it's not constrained? Because it's not green. What I'm going to constrain it to is I'm going to do a contact that center line to the horizontal axis, the yellow axis. And then I'm going to contact this vertical line to the vertical yellow axis. Part is fully constrained. Okay, and now I can build whatever I want. So I'm going to hit, I'm going to have, oh Dave, you did this wrong. Of course you will have a picture of this correct, in the correct part body, renaming your coincidences, these two here as your datums. Okay, and that belongs in the part body. I'm sure you won't make that same mistake I made. I'm going to exit out, open the geometrical set, and drag and drop the sketch into the part body so nobody knows I made that mistake. Except for you guys just watch me. Alright, so we'll go ahead and just kind of slide around to just check out the ISO view of this. I'll make the pad, select the reverse direction is let's go 2 inches, let's go 1 inch, and let's do this right here. This will make it a symmetrical part. Seems like it would have been just easier to say symmetrical or mirror, one of the two, but that's what it will do. Oops, I didn't pick the profile yet. So we're going to go 1 inch and then select that is going 1 inch in that direction, and when I hit the mirror option it adds an inch here, so this part's really 2 inches wide. I'll select OK. That's how I created this part. Now, to get the part not to work, which so many people will do in production, and you got to learn to be careful when you're working with other people's stuff, is I'll create a plane and I'll do it off the XY plane. I'll reverse the direction, and if you recall 0.75, actually I could just leave it there and select OK. Create a sketch on this plane, and I just created a rectangle anywhere. At this point I'm not really caring. Try and make it look a little more symmetrical, but I just want to get a piece in there. And if you want, you can just highlight the whole thing and auto constrain it. Now you got a constrained profile. Okay, and you can move it to wherever you want, which you guys probably should, but I'm just doing this for demo. I'm going to go ahead and create that pad. So using sketch 2, we'll exit out of sketch and we'll go into the pad feature. And as you recall, under pad, we didn't want to type in the dimension, because if I type in the dimension of 1.5 inches, it will look good right up until someone modifies that sketch. And I change this 0.75 to 1 inch, exit out, and notice this thing's just magically hovering in space now. Okay, so what we do is we don't use the length. We can use up to next on both first and second limits. And now it's set perfect. When somebody goes into sketch 1 and decides they want one just like it, but they want one a little taller, they go to 2 inches, exit out. The part is now 4 inches but that has no problem. This beam in the inside has no problem following it. Okay, so that's great. You've already taken your picture with the pad having both limits. Okay, I'm going to cancel that, and I'm going to delete the pad, and I'm going to delete the sketch, and I'm going to do what's called a position sketch. Under position sketch, you want to make sure this blue is not active. You want to have that deactivated, and I want to grab this line as my horizontal and this line is my vertical, and I'm going to invert the horizontal vertical, select OK, create that rectangle somewhere on this part. Again, if I want to, I can highlight this whole thing and just go right to auto constrain. Sorry, select OK. Just let that thing get constrained. Okay, let's go to sketch 2 and let's put that back at 0.75. When I exit out, because I did a position sketch, it keeps that on that plane automatically. So when I go to pad, use that sketch there, which may be easier to grab off the tree. Don't key in a distance. Go up to length. Or I mean up to next. Select OK. Now, I didn't do that for the second limit, did I? What will happen if I go to sketch 1, change 0.75 to 1 inch, exit out? Notice that even though I didn't set the second limit, it knew to grow downward. Why? It is because I used position sketch. Now, it used to be really obvious on V5. Now I can barely tell. If you look at sketch 1 and look at sketch 3, can you see a difference from those icons? Look at sketch 1 and look at sketch 3. I don't even know if you'll be able to see it without creating it yourself. There's a little blue dot, barely even visible. Maybe I'm just really blind, but this hardly visible for me to see it. Someone like me with my eyesight, I'm having a hard time seeing that that little blue dot is there. Let me know that they did a position sketch. Okay, and there's nothing really else different to compare a whole lot. It looks like it's telling me it needs to do an update, but it doesn't. It needs an update because it knows there's been a change. But honestly, this one never seems to affect anything if I don't update it or not. Okay, but it's linked to that bottom surface, so if I change it again, it's probably going to have those updates again. But you'll see these all look the same. Your origins and all that, your geometry, all that's going to look identical for the most part, the same stuff. You don't see anything really special in this specification tree that distinguishes that one is a position sketch and the other one is just a regular sketch. Alright, so the only way I know is that little blue dot right there to compare the difference from one sketch to another when someone used position sketch. If I double click the pad, there's nothing in this profile in this sketch here that tells me something unique has happened and we've done a position sketch. When I click on this pad, I don't really see anything different that tells me that there's a position sketch. So your only indicators that I know of is that little tiny dot here knowing I did a position sketch, which tells me I'm linked to an axis system. It doesn't even tell me I'm necessarily linked to that plane. I don't necessarily know that. So under pad number 3 for a second limit, I can always just say up to next, say okay, and it's just good practice to know that you've got up to next active. Okay, and then when I do change this, regardless as to whether or not a position sketch was done or not, when I change that to 1 1/4 inch and they both change when I exit out, it's going to follow. I know it's going to follow because I have this right here with the position sketch. So you're going to make a picture, the same part right here, open up your tree so I can compare your sketch 1 and 3, or in your case maybe it'll be just sketch 1 and 2, that you actually use position sketch. Alright, that concludes this demo.